So hopefully this is going to be the last tutorial of creating the Glock Source series, and this is going to be the compiling. We're going to start off by just opening up Steam, which I've already done. I'm just going to go into Source SDK. If you don't have this, you've just got to download it through, where is it? Manage guest active. Well, you just go into the games bit. View my games. Store, that's it. So you'd want to go into the store, and then you've got tools at the end here, or you can download the SDK. Oh. Once we have done that, the next thing we want to do is just double click on it, which should open it up. Chug away for half an hour, knowing my machine. Shazam. There we go. Right, what we want to do is we want to make sure that current game is set on the game which we are compiling to, because this will change the directories where the game's compiled to. For example, if you're on Half-Life 2, it will compile stuff into the Half-Life 2 directory. If you're on Counter-Strike Source, it'll go into the Counter-Strike Source directory, and so on for Episode 1 and Deathmatch and any other mods that you've got installed. But of course, we want it set to Counter-Strike Source. We can close that. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by just going into our texture. So mine's already sorted. A lot of this sort of stuff doesn't really take long to do, but I mean, basically PSD here. If we got the, what I've done is I've saved the PSD into a TGA format. File save as. Down here we just want it in TGA, put it on 32 bits, etc. Call it whatever you want. And I've also put in a specular alpha map into the extra channel. So I've just gone a new channel down the bottom here under the channels tab. I've copied and pasted my actual texture. I've also had a good play with the levels of the texture, as you see down there. Sometimes it's quite nice to really feel about with the colour balance, but that's fine. And then I've basically taken this and copied and pasted that into the alpha channels, and again had a play with the levels. So you've just got a specular map. Right, so that's all saved. Let me think, damn it. Right, I'm just going to create a new folder on the desktop. I'm just going to call it Glock Compile. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste my texture into the correct location. Paste. Go on that. Weapons. Capture weapons. Okay, that's where it's compiling to. Decompiles. We're gonna. This is the original decompile which we did of the Glock before we started animating with our SMD in DAR. Final. We don't want that open anymore, I don't believe. So there's our texture. Right. What we're going to do is I've got some nice quick linkies to my Steam directory. So here's all my games. First things first, we want to compile the texture. What I'm going to make sure, because to be honest, I'm not the best in the world at compiling stuff. I am going to cut and paste these out. Right, so basically we've got the game, we've got the SDK set onto Counter-Strike Source, and we're going to go into the Steam directory, and your username, Source SDK, bin, and these are where all the compiling tools are. And what we're going to be using is we've got vtext, which is the little exe file which will compile textures for us, and studio mdl, which is the file which will compile all of our models together. I'm going to start off and we're just going to drag and drop our texture over to vtext, and that's going to give us a little box here. Problem to figure out. He does not like me. Right. The problem here is most likely going to be the length of the directory. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into source SDK content, C strike, materials, weapons. Right. It often prefers compiling from this directory. So that's just gone into the Steam applications, source SDK content, Counter-Strike source, materials, src/weapons. In fact, I think you might have to put them in there anyway. I thought for a minute you could compile them from pretty much anywhere, but apparently not. So this should be fine now. Drag and drop him on. Making an empty one, yeah. Yes, chug, chug, chug. So once that is finally chugged away, it's just going to come up and say hit any key to continue, and we're just going to hit any key, which will shut him down. I'm going to minimise the whole bin thing just there. And where are we? Okay, so this is in the Counter-Strike source directory now. So we've gone into our username, Counter-Strike source, C-Strike, materials. This is where the material is going to have compiled to, into the weapons folder. Thank you very much. And yeah, basically it's gone to the weapons folder. It's known to put it, or the compiler knows to put it in there because it's in this equivalent folder in the source content, C-Strike, materials, SCR/weapons. So because it's in the weapons folder in here, it knows to put it in the weapons folder in the actual game. Well, I hope that makes sense. And that's why it wasn't working from the desktop as well. Sorry, I haven't done any decompiling for a good couple of months. Trying to refresh my memory. Anyway, so what it's done is it's compiled our texture into glock.vtf, and the VTF is just the file format that Source uses. Valve, I guess, have developed it themselves. And what we need to go with that is a VMT file with the equivalent name. And all you need to do is just right-click, create a new text document, and we're just going to call it glock.vmt. And the VMT is a small text file that just sort of says this is how the texture works. It's got sort of all the information on the specular map, sort of how bright and things like that. What I normally have of these is I always have a default one which I'll keep and copy and paste because I am absolutely rubbish in at sort of remembering stuff like this. So I'm just going to copy and paste that one and talk a little bit for it. So basically we want to start off by saying it's a vertex lit generic. The other option that you can put in, well, you can't put in, but another one which you'll often see is light map generic, and this is more for textures on levels. When you do a lot of work in Hammer, you put in all your lighting, etc. And it then renders the light maps from the lighting in the engine over your textures, so light map generic basically. But we are doing a vertex lit generic, so we want to put that in. Fonts, slightly bigger font. Then we've got texture base. This is the directory of our VTF file. That's the one we want. So It's in weapons slash Glock. It knows to look in the materials file, so you don't need materials, you just want weapons slash Glock. And notice how it's a forward slash rather than a backslash. The next line we've got is env map, and then env cube map, which is here. That basically just says, yes, I have a specular map, and it uses the local cube map, which are put in through the map editor, so you don't really have to worry about them. The next line, env map tint. Right, this is an RGB value. You can give your specular level sort of a blue tint or a red tint or whatever by putting these up. But these are also the brightness of your specular map. So if these are all on 1, that's pretty much full brightness. So you can have a good feel about it. I've all just got them on 0.25. env map mask. What that does is it tells it to use the alpha channel of the TGA which you have compiled as a mask for your specular map. So a mask we know as blacks off and whites on, all that sort of generic stuff which we have gone through with texturing, but that's just basically telling it to use the specular map that we have. So we've got, yes, it does have a specular map, this is how bright it is, and yes, use this as a mask. That's the order of it. And base texture, just file save. I probably will put this in with when I upload the tutorial, because I'm a bit rubbish at compiling it. But yeah, that should be it for those two. That's the texture compiled. The next thing we want to do is we want to just start gathering together. I'm going to close Photoshop. All of our files. Seeing where I'll put them. Now, I always end up opening so many windows, and then I get a little bit confused as to what's what. So what you need to do is you need to install the SMD importer and exporter, which you probably should have done, being able to open up the SMDs previously, you know, the animations which we've opened up in the past. But I'm just going to save a few files just to show you what it's all about. So I'm just going to go in my documents, tutorials, tutorial. No, weapon animation. Right, these are all my animation files which I had to redo because of that little error which you may well have saw. Right, first file we've got is we're going to do the reference file. Open, save. No, if you don't want to save it, you can booger off. Chugging away. And basically, yeah, as I've said previously, the reference file has the models and the bone. The model will be rigged and weighted to the bones. Should I pause it there for a second while it loaded? Okay, so what we've got in here is we need to make 2 reference files. First of all, I'm going to delete the camera there. So the first one is going to be for the arms. So we're just going to select the gun mesh, hit delete, and then we're going to file, export. Let's find. We want to keep all of these SMD files together, by the way. Sort of got to find a nice little spot to put them in. I do believe I've made one. Weapon tutorial, weapon, animation, compile. See, I've already compiled them before, but I'll probably just do a few. So go into our compiled folder, scroll down, SMD, and we'll just call this hands_reference. Save. We want to put our exporter onto reference, so it creates collision models. I'm just going to export. You'll notice that the hands are green here. This is from where I've had that little problem that you saw in one of the tutorials, and I ended up redoing the bones and things. Alright, the next thing we want to do is just undo, so the gun comes back. Select the arms this time, and we'll delete these And then we're going to export again into Glock_reference. So this shows that we've got two reference files. We've got basically two meshes which are put together from two separate files. One's just got the gun in, one's just got the arms in. Save as a reference, yes. Export. Okay. Now what we want to do is just start going through all of our animation files. So I'm just going to drag and drop him. Just doesn't really matter what order, just one by one. And what we want to do here is again delete the camera, unhide all. And what we want to do is select the gun, delete, select the arms, delete. So all we've got in are the bones and dummies. And we're going to export those. Yes, this is Glock_burst. Burst 1, in fact. GLOCK. You want to make sure your spellings are good here. And here we just want to have it on a skeletal animation rather than the reference. Export. Export is fine, thank you very much. And I'll do another one, but basically you want to go through every single one of your animations and do the same thing. Unhide all. Delete everything we don't need. Camera, arms, gun, delete, file, export, Glockburst 2. Save. Okay. So, I think you get the idea. I'm just going to close up Max now. So here's one I've done earlier, very Blue Peter stylies. Maybe if everyone sends their lovely finished guns to me, I may even give out Blue Peter badges. Imagine that. But, yeah, here are our compiles. So we've got our Glock reference. I've called it arms reference there, but in fact, sorry, something that I was meant to do. I've got a list of here that I'm going down and I've just missed something off the list. Let's go back into Max quickly. This is why I recommend people to watch these videos first. You can tell I'm too lazy to go back and do them over and over again. Basically what I was going to do was just give you a little once over about how you need to set up the scene in the reference files. You can't just export them to get the textures working and things. So just going to reference, here we go. Open. So what you're going to have a file like this. And what you need to do, the arms you don't really need to worry about. They should be fine. It's the gun which you need to set up correctly. And what you need to do is you need to apply the texture in a multi-sub object format. So what we do, this is already set up, but I'll do another one here. So we've opened up like a new window, standard, and we're just going to go multi-sub object. Okay. Discard all material, doesn't really matter. And then in the top one, as per usual, you just put a diffuse map on. And what you want to do is put on the actual texture itself. So I'll go through and find my Glock texture. It doesn't really matter what format you put on, because it only looks at the name. I normally try and put on the final TGA here, but as long as it's called Glock dot whatever, it should be fine. This just helps it to find the texture later on. You also want to make sure that you only have one multi-sub object. So now if you look, I've got two from where I've just created one. We don't want him, we're going to delete. Yes. Oh, just put you on standard. Standard blood. Like so. So that's on standard. It's You'll also notice, because like I was saying, you can only have one material on each object, or per scene. You apply more than one texture through the use of material IDs. I'm not really going to explain that now because I don't really need to. Hoping you may have some idea of what more multi-material IDs and things are. If if things do have more than one texture, for example, this gun, say if this grip was a slightly different texture, I'd have this area as ID2, ID1, ID2 I would apply the correct texture, ID1 I would apply the correct texture. You would then compile both of the textures, I do believe, and in the materials section you'd counter-strike source. Yeah, to say you could compile both of the textures, and you would have a VMT and VTF for each texture, so you would have two. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to go through, is just making sure you've got a multi-sub object material on, bung it in, but you do that before you export, okay? Anyway, so that was a little bit of a cock-up. Alright, so here's my compiles. I've got the reload animation, the reference to the gun, the idle animation, single fire, draw, burst, 1 and 2, and the arms reference as well. Now that we've brought all these together, we also want to bring in our final file. I'm going to put these just here just to bring it all together a little better. Copy paste. You don't really need to do all this. This probably looks like a complete mess to you. It's a complete mess in my head. That's why I always get fed up with compiling. Right. So what you remember is we decompiled our model before, and it gave us a nice little QC file. All we're going to do is just copy it and paste him in with all of these. And what this does, this is the file that sort of links, that actually compiles the model and tells it what everything is and where everything is and what it's meant to be doing. And we put that in with all our SMDs, and when it compiles, it knows where all the SMDs are because it's in the same directory and just chugs away. So what we need to do is just go through it. So model name, this is where it gets compiled to. You want to keep it as this name because this is the name that the code's looking for, and that's the directory. We don't need to change that. The next is the name of our reference file for the gun. Theirs is Glock18.reference, which isn't the same as ours, so we just need to change it to Glock. The next section, model hands. We haven't called ours hands. We've actually, well, I didn't. I actually called it arms because So I'm just going to change that. You can obviously call things whatever you want. Right, the next section is where the material is. What you'll notice is theirs is in models, weapons, V models. This isn't actually where we've put ours. So what I'm going to do is just change that. So we've gone into materials. You'd have to imagine that there's materials in the front of that. So those would be materials, models, weapons, etc. But ours is just, we want to take off models because we're in weapons. That's just weapons. Oh, actually, sorry, I've taken the wrong one off there. Weapons slash. Get rid of that. All the subdirectories. We're just weapons slash Glock, and you actually want to. Actually, it might just be just slash weapons. We'll soon find out. If I'm wrong, which might be quite handy, I can show you what happens if it doesn't find the texture. Anyway, we'll just carry on going through. Attachment, we don't really want those, but just leave them in there. Sequence, okay, this is what we want now. We want to start going through the sequences. So the first sequence, Glock idle. We've got the animation there. Fire burst, we've recreated that. Glock burst 2, we've recreated that. Single fire, we've recreated that. Fire last, we haven't done that one. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to double bracket it out, or double slash it out. Then we've got the draw. I mean, all you really need to change here is this here, what's in the quotation marks. That is the actual sort of file that it's looking for, the SMD. So say if your reload was called reload 1, you would just have to come in here and change this from Glock reload to Glock reload 1. Same with all of these. If it was a Glock burst fire 7, you just have to come in here, change that from Glock burst 2 into Glock burst 7. But that is basically it. What we then want to do is just copy all this, and I like to put it in the source content folder. I don't think you have to with models. I think you do with the textures, but not so much models. But I'm gonna do it anyway. So I've gone into content, Counter-Strike, models, weapons. Chuck that all in there. Now we just need to get back to our bin file. I just want to drag and drop him over the Studio MDL. And I'm not sure if it works. See, this is the problem with Studio MDL, is that what it will do is it will come up here, chug, 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 and disappear again, and is really not helpful. Whereas if you compile through context, which takes a little bit of setting up to do, and what you'll notice is it comes up around yeah, and it just goes through saying what it can and can't find. So Glock idle, could not load Glock fire burst. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? Indeed. Basically, I've just got the name slightly wrong. So yeah, that's a little. It'll come up saying yeah, it can't load. One of the first things to look at is the name. So I just want to take off the fire because ours was just called burst rather than fire burst. Compile it again. Unknown link. We don't need those in. Let's get rid of those. V weapon parent. We don't have those bones. These are the name bones and attachment links. I've tried to use them before, but always had problems. There we go. So now it's started to compile properly. It comes up telling us all the information while it creates the final file. Generating mesh. So it says it's completed now. Final thing to do is just to check that it's working. Check that the textures are there, etc., etc. We just want to go into the model viewer. Ugh. Opening up file, load model. It's a nice list of things we want. Weapons. The V underscore pistol Glock 18, I do believe. Open. Oh, there she blows. And that is our Glock. What can we do in here? Sequence. We can flick through all the different sequences, so that's the draw. Burst fire 2. Have a fiddle about in here, like you've got left click to rotate, right click to zoom in and out. I think you can pan somehow. What's pan? Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, everything will look a little over shiny in here really, but don't worry about it. The best thing to do is check in game. Right, if you come in here and your weapon's working, the animations are working, but you've got black and pink checkers, that means that you've got a problem with the texture. And generally the problem isn't anything major. The problem often just comes down to wrong directory. So the best thing to do is first of all check in your texture VMT, make sure that this line is correct. And a lot of the time what you can do is just come into here and make changes. So if I come in here, put these on 1, file save, and then just refresh. I didn't bloody close that, did I? So you can just refresh your model view and you can actually see the texture changing. You don't have to recompile. You can see it's not actually quite so bright in here anymore. It's not quite as shiny. It's still really shiny. There's funny specular maps in here. Actually, it's not going to make any changes to the arm anyhow. How do you scroll? Shift. I was trying Control and Alt. There we go. So there's a little gun going. You can also look at him in the slow motion. But you can do loads of cool stuff in here. You can sort of change the colour of the lighting, all that sort of cool stuff. But to say you can quite happily make changes in here. The other place to look at the texture location is obviously in the QC file which you use to compile it. If you make any changes in here, i.e. change the directory of where where it's looking for the textures, you have to recompile. But again, compiling, I would recommend context. Get it. I'll try and find the link for it. Because just this whole thing that it gives you here, the information on how it's compiling and things, comes in so handy. I mean, as you can see when it was saying, can't find this folder. You have a look, you've just got the name slightly wrong, fixed, done. With the other one, with the normal stuff, it just flashes on and off, and you don't know what's wrong with your models. But what am I going to do now? I was going to have a quick peep in Counter-Strike Source. Out of textures, but hopefully, I mean, it went pretty smooth. It takes a little while to get your head round compiling. Do it again and again and again and again and again until it works. And to say, I'm not 100% sure how well I explained it. I think overall it wasn't too bad. I was opening up a lot of files and subfolders here and there, but basically, just put everything together in one folder. Put your textures together, your SMDs, all in one folder. Compile the texture, drag and drop it out. I'll put your QC in there as well. Do your VMTs, etc., and then finish off by doing the texture. So the final part of this little section of the tutorial is to really get in game and have a look at your work, make sure it's all working correctly. Some of the problems you might find is that it's not actually on screen, but you can see sort of little bits there. That might be due to all your animations being in the wrong sort of direction in Max, your source files are facing the wrong way. You might also find there's no texture on it, but you should have seen that in Model Viewer. You want to go through and test all of your animations. So my idle's working, I've got him going up and down. My draw. Shot. I've got two different animations which sort of get around to select the end of the play. Reload's obviously working, and finally and you'll end up running about trying to kill everyone with a Glock, even though you never normally do it because it's a good shit. Yeah, it's good fun doing your own working game, and it gives you a nice bit of motivation to actually go out and do a bit more work. Characters are a bit hard to get in game, but it is the same principle really, whereby you have the reference files and then you have all the animation files. But say decompile some of the original stuff, have a good look through. This is another weapon which I've done quite recently. Big gloved hands. But yeah, this is my current knife. yeah, that's it really. I wish everyone good luck on getting their working game, and I hope to see a nice lot of work up on the forums and things. Maybe even some videos of animation, because we don't really get much animation there, so it'll be interesting to see what people come up with. And yeah, to say, wish everyone good luck, and that's bye from me.